The much-awaited coronation of King Charles III and Camilla has concluded at Westminster Abbey. The coronation took place at the Royal Church, which has seen a similar ritual for 39 monarchs. Now, the UK hosted a coronation after 70 long years. The skies of London have been overcast throughout the day, but it has failed to cast a shadow on the glitz and glory of the royal event. We are being told the King and Queen will soon arrive at Buckingham Palace. This will be followed by a balcony moment, the kind you see at royal weddings, jubilees, where the royal couple will be joined by other members of the royal family. There will be a flypast by military aircraft featuring planes from World War II. William the Conqueror, who was crowned at Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day. Prior to that, there was no established location for the coronation of the British monarch. Starting with King Charles III and Queen Camilla, they left Buckingham Palace and then headed towards Westminster Abbey. By the time they reached, all the invitees were seated. Now, it is quite a trimmed-down ceremony compared to the late Queen Elizabeth's coronation ceremony, which went on for 3 hours back in 1953. In the solemn ceremony, first thing was the recognition of the monarch. King Charles III stood beside the coronation chair, or the Edward's chair, and the Archbishop of Canterbury called on the attendees to recognize the monarch. Just moments ago, the Archbishop poured the chrism oil on the King's hands, chest and head. This tradition is supposed to reinforce the divine right of the monarch. It was made using olives harvested from 2 groves. Now, following the anointing, Charles was presented with various regalia, and then the king was finally crowned. It is called St. Edward's crown. It was made back in 1661 for the coronation of King Charles II and has been stored in the Tower of London since. The crown is made of solid gold. It is studded with 444 gemstones, including rubies, sapphires, garnets, and tourmalines. The crown weighs 5 pounds, and this is the first and only time that Charles will be wearing this crown. But it won't be the only crown that the king will be wearing. When King Charles was being crowned, gun salutes were fired from military bases around the UK. Once King Charles was crowned, he was moved from the coronation chair to the throne. Now, following this, the King and the Queen departed Westminster Abbey and undertook what's called the coronation procession. The King and Queen travelled in a gold state coach. It is 260 years old. It is said to weigh 4 tons and is pulled by 8 horses and can only travel at a walking pace. This coach was first used by King George III to travel to the state opening of the Parliament in 1762, and the coach has been used in every coronation since King William IV's in 1831. Members of the public will line up along the way to greet the royal couple. 4,000 military personnel will be a part of the procession, including the armed forces from the Commonwealth countries, British overseas territories, and the sovereign's bodyguard and royal watermen. After arriving back at Buckingham Palace, the King and Queen will receive a royal salute from the military. This will be followed by a balcony moment. Now, for more on this, my colleague Molly Gambir joins us live from London. Hello to you, Molly. You have been tracking all the events leading up to this day very closely. What are the sentiments of the people that you have?
Well, let me begin by saying, Alison, that the gloomy weather has not really dampened spirits on the ground. The enthusiasm levels continue to soar as the day progresses. In fact, it's been a coronation service that Britain has witnessed after 70 years, after all, and a moment that people on the ground have been waiting for. Having said that, there is, of course, that contrast in the sentiment when we look at the anti-monarchy protesters, for example. There were arrests that were made along the procession route as well as a part of the measures to make sure that the ceremony goes on smoothly, and there's also the aspect of how people have been questioning the very fact that this is a ceremony coming at a time with all that expenditure of millions when the UK has been witnessing that cost of living crisis, which has continued to make headlines over the last few weeks. There's also that contrast in the sentiment when it comes to the younger population versus the older population. Some of the people we've been speaking to as far as the younger lot is concerned, talking about how they don't really see the monarchy as being relevant in today's day and age. They feel like it's an outdated institution, quote unquote. On the other hand, the older lot feeling like this is about continuity, it's about consistency and tradition. Speaking of tradition, this was a deeply religious, traditional ceremony, which was a trimmed down version if you compare the one that Britain saw 70 years ago with the one that happened today. 8,000 guests the last time, 2,000 this time, but the pomp, the glamour, the glitz continuing to remain an integral part of the ceremony. Of course, the enthusiasm levels, the crowds who've been gathering on the streets just to catch a glimpse of the royal couple passing by, waiting for them to wave at them and cheering away. Thousands of those people who've gathered, and which is why this has been the biggest security operation in recent times in Britain. More than 11,000 police officers have been involved as a part of this operation. And this is just the beginning, by the way. The next 2 days, we will see street parties at various points, and this is, after all, a nationwide celebration that people have been waiting for. They've travelled from different parts of the UK, making their way to London to witness this event in person. Of course, there are millions who've been watching on their couches, on the TV sets. The sentiment overall has been a mixed one, I would say, and the people we've been speaking to as well have been, shedding light on the very fact that this is a ceremony that's coming at a very interesting time. There are also the interesting aspects of how this is a ceremony which was somewhat different in terms of the elements that King Charles has adopted this time. For example, reusing some of the historic items. Remember, he's been called the climate king, someone who's ahead of his time in terms of the minor tweaks as far as the ceremony itself is concerned, is something that has been discussed as well.
Absolutely, Molly. Now, as you've mentioned, first coronation that has been witnessed in 70 years, steeped in tradition. What an incredible ceremony that was. Take us through some of the elaborate planning that goes into putting on a spectacle of this magnitude, albeit somewhat muted compared to the last coronation witnessed in the UK.
Well, given the fact that this one is coming after 7 decades, a lot has changed in the 70 years, of course. But as far as the ceremony itself is concerned, a 1,000-year-old tradition, that itself has not changed much. Having said that, a mammoth security operation, like I was mentioning, over 11,000 police officers have been involved as a part of this operation, which has been codenamed Operation Golden Orb. That, of course, is keeping in line with the code words that are used for such operations. Beyond that, there's also been the controversy over the use of facial recognition technology. Remember, the Met Police had maintained that this technology will only be used and could be used to clamp down on protesters. And like I said, the protests have also been making news with several arrests that have been made along the procession route. That was anticipated. Trafalgar Square, where we were earlier, has been a site of protests as well as celebrations. That, of course, has been a contrast in itself when we have the anti-monarchy protesters, the Not My King movement, for example, the Republic group. They've been making their voices heard, and the larger sentiment in that camp has been also questioning the expenditure, spending around 150 million spending about 50 to 100 million pounds on a ceremony like this, with all that pomp and show at a time like this, though it's been called a scaled back version of the previous ceremony, a trimmed down version. But then again, it does involve a lot of that money being spent. The argument as far as those defending that expenditure goes is, well, it's about tourism, it's about bringing in money, it's about spending money to bring in money, and that has been the larger argument as far as that economical aspect of the ceremony is concerned.
Right, and of course the value that the monarchy adds to the British economy. Now, of course, the last coronation of Queen Elizabeth II was the first televised coronation that was witnessed in history, with 27 million plus viewers watching in the UK alone. Is this coronation being witnessed and viewed and celebrated as widely as the last coronation?
Well, if you ask those who've been camping overnight, they did not want to watch the ceremony on TV at all. They wanted to be a part of the celebrations in person, and which is why they've travelled from different corners of the UK to physically be present and be a part of the procession route through the day, so that they catch a glimpse of the royal couple passing by. For them, that one moment when the royal couple waves at them or they cheer while the procession is underway has been a moment that they've been waiting for. One of the groups that I spoke to just last night, who were, as a part of the campers at the mall, right next to Buckingham Palace, they were telling me how even when the Queen passed away, they wasted no time in making their way to this part of London. And that's just the kind of commitment that we've seen, and the enthusiasm that we've seen from many of those who, have been camping overnight. They do not want to watch this on their television sets. But having said that, yes, a lot of the people we spoke to were telling us that this is going to be a day that they spent with their family, at home, watching the coronation. Why not? And this is also just the beginning of that weekend-long celebration, like I was mentioning. So we have the coronation lunch lined up tomorrow. That's again a nationwide celebration. And the coronation quiche that was selected by the royal couple being an integral part of that celebration. Beyond that, there's a royal concert lined up for Sunday. So it's going to be a mega weekend, a nationwide party in a way, and that fervor continuing on the ground. And that is something that definitely, remains a continuing element as far as the royal pomp and show is concerned.